Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed the refreshments prepared for you. So for our final segment, we have a panel discussion regarding what are the risks of AI and how do we manage them. So a gentle reminder, if you have questions for the panel, you can submit them via the QR code. And with that, Professor Chee, over to you.
Okay, I'll reserve the last 50 minutes for Q&A, so not to worry. I'm not sure if the software is still down. If it's down, then we have our backup plan, which is the manual. Okay, okay, but at least we have backup plan. Okay. Anyway, let me do a brief introduction first. I will just go down the row. So briefly introduce, you'll see the more details in the CDOIQ website. So let me first introduce Mr. Benedict Tan. He's the Group Chief Digital Strategy Officer and the Chief Data Officer for the SingHealth cluster. So his portfolio includes IT delivery support, cybersecurity, analytics, data management, data governance. And he also promotes the effective use of data in a secure manner. So Benedict has more than 30 years experience in the healthcare IT industry in both public and private institutions. So, and he has played key leadership roles in the implementation of several large-scale IT and process re-engineering projects. So Benedict also drives the SingHealth digital strategy and roadmap to enrich the digital experience of patients and staff. So if you use any apps or digital experience in SingHealth and you like it, he'll be the mastermind. Okay. So next, I want to introduce Benny Chee. He's the Director Partner Product Management, okay, APJ for MCAFEE. So Benny has spent over 15 years at MCAFEE and more than 2 decades in cybersecurity. Beginning his career as a systems security engineer at the Ministry of Home Affairs, and there he established the security standards for the public sector. So now Benny spearheads the creation of innovative solutions to safeguard businesses and individuals from cyber threat. So if you are facing potential issues from cyber threats, then he will be the expert to talk to. Okay, and before that, I just reminded I need to introduce Benny a bit more. He is our alumni, NTU alumni. Okay, Triple E. Okay, and he come back again for our executive MBA program and another alumni. So double alumni. Okay. Next, we talk about Kenny Tay. He's the CEO for the Singapore Digital Chamber of Commerce. He managed the strategic matters, government agency communication, corporate programs, activities. Additionally, Kenny holds an executive position within the International Digital Chamber of Commerce based in the USA. So in addition to his involvement in these chambers, Kenny Tay is also the founder for AI49 International and TalkBot International, a company specializing in generative AI solutions. So Gen AI solutions, if you are looking for some advice or help, I guess he's one person they can talk to. Okay, later. Okay. Next we have David Tan. He's the Chief Data Officer, Income Insurance. So he designs and leads the data analytics and AI capability development across the entire organization. So he's a tech leader who has led strategy, data analytics, AI transformation in the financial industry across Asia Pac. And he has built and led enterprise teams across data analytics, center of excellence, risk management, marketing, operations to drive digital data and AI capability transformation. So, and right now he's focused on driving partnership with cross-functional leaders and executives to leverage data and AI to achieve digital transformation, business growth, and efficiency. So partnerships. So I guess if you are having issues with getting buy-in from your management, I guess he has lots of experience to share about that. Okay. Okay, let's get started. We'll do some general things first about, especially on use of AI. So maybe we can share with the audience in what areas have you been using AI, and if there are many areas, maybe you can just choose the top 1 or 2 to focus on. So give them some ideas on how you use AI in your organization. Okay, starting from maybe Benedict. You can go down.
Yeah. Hi. First of all, just want to extend my thanks to CDOIQ and to Neumann for inviting me to kind of share at this forum with everyone, and a very good hot afternoon to all of you. I'm actually, as per my introduction, I'm actually in healthcare all my working career, right? And I'm very passionate about healthcare, and I just to kind of share is that I think the technology that would really transform healthcare would be AI, and especially generative AI, right? Just a bit of background, the clinicians, the doctors, they are kind of unhappy, or we haven't really have the technology that the clinicians are really excited about, that they think it will really help them in their work, until the arrival of AI, and stress especially generative AI, right? So if you all go to clinics and so on and so forth, you'll find that the doctors these days are behind keyboard and a screen, right? So gone are the days where they kind of miss those days where they engage the patients directly, face the patients directly, and just speak to the patient. So generative AI, if we implement it correctly, later on we're going to go without discussions about risk and so on and so forth. But if we implement it correctly and accurately, it would transform the way the doctors and nurses practice, right? They would just speak, discuss, check the patient, speak into the microphone or into an ambient listening devices. The computer will register, translate voice to text, and from text to structured text in the medical format, required medical format, and then it becomes a clinical notes. So the doctors would just take a look at it, verify the data, verify whatever has been captured, press the save key. Versus today, they have to click key in everything, and then check, and then press the save key. So we are actually exploring and developing products and solutions, not just in Singapore, but globally across the entire all the other countries as well. And a lot of them has already arrived and implement and are piloting products on the generative AI part, where it converts voice to text, then to structured text. And the other area that we are using generative AI a lot is on a large language model, where they dive into huge volumes of medical journals, medical information, and then to help them to do research, to kind of explore and see a good treatment path pattern for especially rare diseases, right? So where it takes a human being many nights, many days to go through the voluminous data, etc., etc. Once we have a generative AI, LLM, it can actually do that with a fast computer, perhaps in a matter of seconds and minutes. Yeah.
Okay. Do you see the need to develop the AI in-house, or you can easily collaborate with external vendors for the AIs?
Okay, so the medical fraternity, we do a couple, right? We do both in-house as well as we collaborate with not just entities within Singapore, but also overseas. And we all know that we are, human beings. We have different phenotypes and genotypes. So what works? A predictive model may work very nicely in a different phenotype, genotypes, maybe in Caucasian. But you take it over here, then it's different, right? Just a very simple example, BMI. Once upon a time, we all thought that, if our BMI is between 23, 24 to 25, 26, we are okay, all right? Then someone did a study, right? But for Asian phenotype, if you're 24, you're leaning towards the not so healthy range. So we actually had to lower the BMI to between 22 to 24. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for the sharing. Next, Benny.
Yeah, hi. I think everyone knows about McAfee. I think we are one of the largest consumer cybersecurity company in the world. So very focused on consumer. So all our AI applications are mostly on the defense manner, but safeguarding the user's digital life, digital experience, digital devices. And I would say that mostly on two fronts. The first one is on our backend, and the second one is the tools that our user use to safeguard all their digital experiences. So just to touch on these two fronts, on the back end, we employ models, AI models, that is more on the traditional AI way of doing, where we analyze and classify samples, the vast amount of samples that we receive. So it helps us, understand, how certain samples react, and also let us be able to analyze and predict the next step that every samples will take, and to be able to help users, prevent them from, being attacked by, existing threats, as well as emerging threats, or normally what we call a zero-day attack. So we are very, very successful, and we are very, very high hit rate in terms of detecting, threats that are really unknown. On the front end, we have a lot of innovative tools. In fact, this year we have launched a couple of tools, that, in the way that we don't bring a knife to a gunfight. We are fighting AI with AI. So we have developed, three products, in fact. I'll talk about three. So email and SMS scam detection. So right now, you have your spam filters, the traditional spam filters, and then you will see a lot of them are right now. The hackers, the attackers are now creating email scams, and SMS scams, all through generative AI, because they can mimic, the way that there is natural language, a human readable language that will bypass those traditional, spam filters. And that's the way that we are able to protect the users, inform the users way ahead, saying that, this email is most probably, AI manipulated. And then the last product that I want to talk about is our deepfake detector. So we have developed, in fact, with the collaboration with Intel, in their ultra-core processor, I think we're using their neural processing unit, the NPU, to do deepfake detection at near real time. So which means that if the user is viewing a video, it doesn't take, we don't have to upload the video to the cloud to process it. It's all done, locally on the machine, or they call it the AI PC, the AI PC phase that we are going to get that's coming. And then with all this identifying, understanding, we are able to detect, whether a video is deepfake within seconds. So the user, while watching, the next second, they'll say that this video is most probably AI manipulated, whether you want to stop watching, take an action, or whether you want to believe or not believe, the content by itself.
Okay, interesting, using AI to fight AI. Okay, yes. Yeah. So anyway, ever since Gen AI, so do you notice any big changes in the way the cyber crimes, the type of cyber crimes? Do you notice a big change?
Yeah. The funny thing is that if you go around looking and researching about cyber threats regarding generative AI, you don't see a lot, and there's a lot of hearsay here and there. The thing is that 82% of all threats or whatever is mostly human error. So human error derives from social engineering. So I do see a lot of social engineering being created because of generative AI, because it becomes so personal. Whether malware is created or ransomware or any other types of application that's created because of generative AI, I see very little application of it. Most probably, the hackers, the attackers are still very comfortable with the traditional method of generating applications.
Okay, Ken. Okay, and then go next to Kenny.
Yeah, so I think part of the chamber, we have seen a lot of projects around the region. Primarily, I think one of the very key examples was airline. So I participate in one airline, not to mention name. So let's say, for example, you have your flight cancelled. What's the next thing you're going to do? You need to call someone, right? So instead of you finding some numbers to call, a bot will call you, right? And then ask you that, telling you apologize, the flight is cancelled. What the next thing is that we have these available flights, and upon confirming the available flights, they will ask you things like, do you want to upgrade your seats? You want to order meals? What kind of drinks do you want? What kind of food? Is it, you can ask questions like, I don't want chicken, I only want pork, or end of the day, is it halal or it's not halal? What kind of coffee do I wanted to be served on the plane, right? So all the things can be done using generative AI, and it will be done actually pretty quite soon. And the interesting part is I think is also to get this data, right, from the client and then validate through the systems, right? So this is, I think, one complicated kind of solutioning that's happening in the market. A lot of generative AI, I think, started off, a lot of people telling me that, the scammers are also using that. You hear a lot of scam calls. Until today, I do still receive scam calls, right? But of course, fortunately, in some areas are unfortunate. Yeah, something, AI can be done for good. It also can be done for bad, right? It depends on how the usage is going to be, right? It's not so complicated nowadays, right? I think a lot of companies are getting to know what are the use cases going to be, and starting to explore more and more, right? So of course, innovation is still part of the company process. Yeah.
Okay. Next, David, can you describe some of the use of AI in your company?
Sure. Thank you very much. So firstly, Neumann and CDOIQ, thank you for the invitation. It's really great to be here. Look, maybe I will try and answer it in a more creative way. How we and I personally use AI is we use it as a catalyst. I think that's the word that I always put in my mind when I try and do, or organizations, strategy around it. You can use AI for many facets of an enterprise, right? Be it for profit, non-profit, whatever it might be. You have the front-end usages, right, which we spoke about. You could use it to improve the way we interact with customers, the way you give offerings to customers. You can move a bit to the middle office where you talk about how we can do better offerings for customers, right? You do better segmentations, we've heard about that, loyalties, even to the point where you go towards like risk management, right? So we do that as well to look at outlier detections, right, in the similar use cases that we talked about. But sometimes as well, you could go even further back in and say, okay, like with banks that was before, you could use it for like anti-money laundering detection, right? So essentially, the use of AI is about how do you improve the human cognitive thought that you do, right? That was the first wave, right? That's where a lot of folks are probably, rightfully calling it now traditional AI, right? The same use cases, if you reverse back 6 years ago, and you said it's for machine learning or big data, same, right? That's the word that I always use. But it doesn't mean that, it goes out the window or whatsoever, but it's about how we think about using AI as a catalyst to continuous improve, right? Nowadays, you obviously have new AI technologies. Everyone knows now about generative AI. I'm sure everyone has used it and tried it. The interesting thing to think about this now is we go, okay, can that be a new data generation point, right? So the way I would sum it up is we use AI as a catalyst in our strategy. One is it's one of the many pillars that we have. In order for AI to be successful, you need to have great data. In order to do all that as well, you need to have great risk management and culture. So that essentially is broadly how I would sum the usage of AI in the organization I'm with, but also the career journey that I've seen across a couple of countries as well.
Okay. Thank you so much. Now that we have a more clearer understanding of the users and the misusers of AI in the different organizations from the panelists, now we can zoom in more direct onto the risks, right? That risk from AI that they encounter or they think that it is important to control, right? And then how do they manage those risks? Okay. Anyone wants to start first? The risks.
I could go. Yeah. So I guess in order to manage the risk, one of the things is it is also not new from a FI perspective. We need to look at it in context of a overall risk framework, right? If you look at businesses, there's always a line 1, 2, and 3. Fortunately, unfortunately, from a FI perspective, things are usually it's more regulated for the right reasons. Therefore, we do work with regulatory bodies on what are the right risk management, what guardrails and frameworks that we do. But essentially, it boils down to this. When you use AI or any models for that matter, there needs to be accountability, right? So it's not about saying, I got this technology and then that generates and then that's it, right? So the sponsors, in the way that you want to use it, you have to be accountable for it. It's only in that model, then you can think about the fairness and the bias that you do, right? Inherently, analytics broadly, it's about some form of segmentation, identify outliers. It's trying to find biases, right, for a certain good, right? But the whole idea is the fairness that we actually want to do. So that is how we actually put that as in terms of a guardrail for any model that we come up. Then the other ones are around the explainability and transparency, right? Explainability is about saying you could throw math equations to try and decipher a certain, algorithm, but it's fundamentally about, do you know what drives this model, right? It can be for the most complex of large language models, or even other neural nets, or even the linear regression. Each have their strengths and weaknesses. So then the risk framework is about saying, how do you actually apply that? And that just speaks to the need for transparency, essentially. What I've just said was FEAT, essentially is, I'm sure you'll be aware as well, there's this framework that is out locally by MAS. It's to actually ensure we use FEAT as a way to look at artificial intelligence broadly. Like Neumann, you mentioned, we are now growing with other bodies where they also try and have recommendations to help everyone think about it. So the idea is, to actually approach the use of this technology, or any technology for that matter, in a safe and a guarded manner. Yeah.
Okay. So interesting, we hear the second time the word explainability again. Okay. So maybe let's zoom in a little bit more on this explainability. Why does it matter? If the algorithm is predicting correctly, wouldn't it be good enough? Why do we need to bother about explainability from your perspective?
Yeah, so I'm biased because I'm a former FI. If you think about it, there was the GFC back in 2008, right? Past articles would talk about how the financial capital markets were driven a lot by algorithms, risk models, right? And then the black swan events were not rightly modeled for. I.e., what it means is we actually didn't know what were the models doing, right? It's very good in good times, but you just need one that can actually reverse. So explainability, in essence, is about knowing how the model decides on a certain decision, right? So that's how broadly I would put it. And then, in a way, depends how you want to apply it. For a less material use case, like trying to look at marketing segmentations, or a more material and complicated one like around risk management, right? It's about knowing what are the parameters, right? So explainability is important. Also in the world today, if you look at analytics 20 years ago, it was a very limited field, right? Even if you wanted to get access to go, I want to learn this at home, it's very difficult. There was only probably one or two vendors, and you spend a lot of money to buy it. Today, you have open source. You have everything around it that you can actually spin it up within 15 minutes. So what it means is then, to my point about creating data, right? There'll be more and more algorithms, more and more concepts that will come out. I use this, I use that. So I put explainability in a way to go, you got to know what you're using and you got to know what you're buying, right? So that you can decipher what are the real important and critical ones amongst the noise.
Okay. Okay, Ken, thank you. How about the rest?
Maybe you can try. Well, I think one of the key topics that we face in part of the chamber was a loss of jobs, right? And the other day when I was talking to NTUC group, not income, right? And we will have got a lot of concerns, like people that in their 50s, they are copywriters for their whole life, and suddenly with ChatGPT and all these algorithm solution coming out, what happens? Should there be an upgrade? And at one point last year when I was in Philippines, I was sharing about how technology can shape in the BPO environment or industry in Philippines. And Philippines is one of the biggest, I suppose, BPO kind of industry in the world, right? I think that, and the ministers, and we were chatting and said that, how can we prevent that? The problem is that technology is here, we can't prevent, you have to upgrade. Yeah, if the value of that industry is $16 billion a year, yeah, can we do it at 2024? Can we do it at 32 because of technology? Why should you not embrace technology, right? And upgrade yourself, right? I think the Singapore government has been trying a lot. We work with a lot of organizations other associations like even SGTechs and Singapore Chinese Chamber of Commerce, to educate, employees, people generally to understand what are happening in the current market. And surprisingly, it takes very long to do that. A lot of work to do that. A lot of pushing. And we're in a country whereby the Singapore government's put out a lot of funds, a lot of grants, skill future credits, yeah. And we also realize that the general people are actually attending those courses, and it's the PMETs in the market attending relevant courses to upgrade, yeah, about technology. I'm not talking about other fields and stuff, yeah. Is it important for employees, in organizations to get to know what's happening in the market? What is generative AI? How can I use generative AI to improve my work efficiency and my processes accuracy? And if as an employee of organization, if I don't know this information or this knowledge, how can I do my job better? How can I propose? How can I upgrade? Right? And then of course, a lot of times this decision has to be made by the C-suites or the senior management of the organization. And the thing is that when that happens, it takes a longer time to execute within the organization. And our biggest concern is that how much time do we have, right? As citizen of this country, and we know that we need to improve. One of our key strengths are humans, talents, in Singapore. Yeah. How are we comparable to the knowledge that people in China, or people even in Malaysia, right? Perhaps you might think that, but if you look at some of the interaction that we had, the people there are very crazy about learning. In some of these countries, how do we compete, right? And I think that's one of the common topics, or kind of questions that and concern we have in the chamber. Yeah.
Okay. How about Benny? Yes.
Yeah.
What are the risks of AI that you encounter?
Yeah, I think in cybersecurity there is these two terms which is very infamous and famous, is false positive and false negative. And the thing is that because we depend on a lot on our models to do this classification, so there might be some that falls off the crack. And we're not so worried about false positive. So false positive means that it could be a clean code or clean application, but classified wrongly as a scam or as a virus. We're more worried about the false negatives. That means it is a malicious code, malicious application that is not classified at all or classified as clean. So we put in a lot of effort and a lot of what we call reinforced learning, fine-tuning to make sure that that we are trying to minimize as much as possible on the false negative and also minimize as much possible on the false negative. In fact, we try to zero whatever that we have in the false negative and try to over-tune it to catch all rather than to let go some of them. So that was one of the major risks in terms of deploying our AI models. The second part is, of course, about data privacy, because both based on the applications that I was talking about, the email, SMS scams, and also the deepfake detector, a lot of users, in fact, because we sell worldwide, a lot of them, do have data privacy concerns. What are you going to do with my data? Are you reading my emails? So we do have, making sure that we adhere to all the laws of the countries, the GDPR, which is the most famous one, the PDPA here, and then many PDPAs, around the region itself. So we look specifically, at what we can do with the data. So what we can collect, what we can store, what we can use, and what we can access. But the good news is that we don't store all your emails, we don't store the SMS based on application, because we do have honeypots, lying a lot everywhere in our points of presence that collects all this, and it's good enough data that we can use to train our model to be able to detect and classify those scams.
Okay. One of the key things that I caught from your message just now is that the false negative is far more expensive, more costly, more consequential than the
more
positive.
Consequential, in fact.
And I hear the word, you say reinforced learning is the way you use to manage that. So just curious, by reinforced learning, do you mean a human coming in to provide additional inputs, or is it a second model that comes in?
So it is reinforced learning, human feedback. So the human, in fact, a lot of users will say that they will submit, samples to us saying that, hey, this has been classified wrongly. So we take all this feedback in. We make sure that it is a real classification error. We run the application on the sandbox. We check the links and everything. And based on that, then we retrain our model to, understand and to learn and to make sure that we don't make the same mistake the second time around.
Okay. Interesting. This sounds a little bit like the experience I had when I'm using ChatGPT. I got the
yeah, exactly the same.
Okay, Ken. Now about Benedict, your experience with risks from AI.
Yeah, so I want to perhaps take a step back from the philosophical side of things to talk about risk. So it's about managing danger, right? And for risks that are known, you know what are the dangers, right? Then you can put in mitigation measures, right? Like regulations, accountable AI, and so on and so forth to defend against those risks. I think increasingly with generative AI, what people are afraid of is risks that you don't know, like hallucinations, right? The scientists don't know why he goes into hallucinations and how you combat hallucinations. And they will just tell you, says, beware of hallucinations. They can't even check how it ended up hallucinating. So those are the bigger dangers that we need to tackle when it comes to risk management. When it comes to data inaccuracy, false negative, false positive, we know we can manage. We can do reinforced learning, we can do everything else. And by the way, healthcare also very scared of false negative.
Yes.
We would tweak it so that, we trap that more than anything else. But for things that we don't know, right? And AI is an area that is emerging, that's growing very, very fast. So how can we collectively come and study that particular area? That's something that a lot of researchers and so on and so forth are actually keen. But on the flip side, everybody is so excited. People may not be fully cognizant of the risk or are prepared to accept the risk. As an example, in areas, not in Singapore, but in areas where there's a lot of rural region villages where they have very little or no access to healthcare. Having a generative AI model that works, sometimes it's a better trade-off than to accept the risk than having something that is 100% working or 99% working. And so there's always risk trade-offs when you talk about risk. Thanks.
Okay. We heard the false negative again. Okay, just now. Okay. Anyway, let's move on now to focus on two particular risks. In January 2024 this year, so the World Economic Forum published a global report on the emerging risks. And shortly after, a website came out from them, World Economic Forum, on the top 3 risks from AI. Okay, so let's discuss. I guess we'll have time for the top 2 risks. The number 1 risk, right, from AI, as listed by the World Economic Forum, is number 1, misinformation and disinformation. Anyone knows the difference between these two words? Misinformation and disinformation. Okay. Very good. Okay. For me, when I first see this, I Google search. Okay. So the first link that came out came from APA, American Psychological Association, and as what was mentioned, the disinformation, right, involve an intention to deceive. So there is a ill intention, right, a bad intention. So misinformation, regardless of intention, we don't care about the intention. So it may or may not be ill intent. Right? There's a misinformation. So now we know the difference between misinformation and disinformation. So let's discuss. Let's open this up to the panelists. Do you have anything to share about these 2 types of risks, and any way we can manage them in your experience, whether company or personal? Anyone?
Yeah, I think one of the, I don't know, I think the world right now works a lot on social media. right? Whether it's on your Facebook or your TikTok, you know,
Mm.
and that kind of stuff. And I think one of the key problems is that how do you know the person speaking in the video is a real person or is an avatar, right? Without using any software in the first place, right? So I'm a consumer. Maybe my country is going through some political elections. You know, somebody is up, you know, saying some things, you know, whether it's a positive or negative about, you know, whatever kind of news. But how do I know that it's real? I think that's a very big problem, right? Not only just the news, how do I know the person is real, right? Because I've seen really good 3D avatars. The Korea actually use it on TV for newscasting, right? And his avatar is not a real person, and they use it for newscasting on TV, right? That's one of the latest news. It's not your typical, I think, avatar solutioning that you see in the market space, you know. So I went to check it out, you know, the Korean company, and he's selling it as a self-serve solution, right? You just pay a sum, you can get to use it. If you want to clone it yourself, you know, if you want to be the clone, okay, whether it's your face or your voice, you pay yourself money. Of course, there's some process to go about that, you know, legally, and there's some protection to protect themselves. But that can, what I'm trying to say is that can be quite easily done with a small sum of money. It's not a lot, right? And I think that will create a lot of issues, yeah, social, economical issues, yeah.
Mm. Anyone?
No, I think in terms of misinformation and disinformation, I think we are, based on our research in McAfee itself, we are seeing a lot of misinformation out there. Not the intention to cause harm, but the intention to gain certain advantage. So the recent research that I did was based on product reviews. So product review websites. So now product review websites are prevalent, right? They just want to promote. They talk about. They say that they are independent party, you know, looking at 5 different products, and which is the better one. And when we look at it, you know, I would say, you know, 50% of most product review websites are skewed towards, you know, of course, the sponsors. And then there are some where I did my research on the person that's doing the product review. And if you do they have the photos, the name itself, you know, never heard of this person. And if you look at the photo itself, we put the photo into our image recognition software. It is AI generated. The thing is that how a normal user will be able to detect all this. You know, tools might help you, but it takes a very, very strong mind to be able to discern, to look at it. Oh, this is skewed towards this particular product. You know, I'm not going to accept it. But it looks really, really real. You know, in terms of disinformation, of course, there's a lot of you know, deep fakes out there. You know, and this is a critical point of time, you know, because of the elections, like what our colleague is mentioning, you know, where everybody is trying to do something. So if you go to the dark web, the marketplace itself, they are offering deepfake as a service. So you don't have to be AI savvy. You don't have to create your own, you don't have to write your own code. You just pay a certain lump sum of money. They will offer you, you know, maybe $100 US per minute. You know, just provide me a video, a photo, maybe a small little short clip of your audio. We're able to create a deepfake for you, just as what you have wanted in terms of the script.
Okay. Interesting.
Shall I come in as well then? I guess from what we do at Income, one of the ways we look at it is, obviously the intent is, it's unintended information that comes. But it goes down to how do you reinforce a model. One keyword, you know, that always now is quite topical is human in the loop, essentially. Like you said, thumbs up, thumbs down, right? What we want to do is always, before we actually launch a model, particularly one that is generative AI, right? Because, well, we talked about hallucination. It looks so real, right? The answers that you give, it's important to put the right skilled person in the loop to actually help us validate as an internal use, right? To keep it in a very guarded kind of a rollout before we actually expand it further. So how we do it is essentially have a staged release so that you go, okay, let's get this whole framework, the pipeline, everything, the technicalities all working. Then we look to tune it, but you tune it in a way that, you know, you want to make sure that it gives the right answer. So it's a combination of prompting to make sure that it refers to the right vector databases. It's also a combination of human in the loop, whereby you make sure that you have hallucination and bias blocks, right? To make sure that it's consuming and producing the right outcomes that we actually want.
Okay. Now
Maybe I just chime in from again a very atomic angle. Whether it's misinformation or disinformation, I may necessarily speak to the development, especially generative AI. At the end of the day, it's all about data, right? So if you want to purposely use leverage generative AI and give this information, right? If you grab hold of the data repository, you feed it with biased data, you can end up giving this information. Misinformation is unintended. You just give bad data and then they just give you bad results. I think the world, or at least the bad actors, will increasingly try, or people with agenda may increasingly try to push out more data that favors them. So if for example, if in the field of medicine, right, and I say, okay, which medicine works best for a certain condition, right? And they know that, oh, I pull data from ABC sources, right? So if I'm a drug, I'm not saying they're doing it, I'm just Hollywood movie, right? They may just push data out to ABC, skew the data, you pull out information from LLM, your data will be skewed, and that's how people will manipulate at the end of the day. It's how you control and manipulate the data.
Okay, yeah, I guess in a certain sense, it's easier to manipulate and control the data than to manipulate the model itself. That's technical skills. Okay, so interestingly, we come to the second risk that is mentioned by the World Economic Forum, and they say number 2, adverse outcome of AI technologies. So very generic. Okay. So let's hear from the 4 panelists what specific adverse outcome have you encountered, or you think that will probably happen, and how do you therefore manage that adverse outcome?
Maybe this time I'll just start the ball rolling. So in the medical side, we are very, very concerned that the doctors are not getting more and more intelligent, because because they rely a lot on technologies, a lot on AI, right? And I believe it's not just doctors, right? Actually, for everybody else. This is a real life example. So we started electronic prescription, meaning we use computer to do prescribing. The doctors just need to remember the first 3 letters of the drugs, and then the whole list come up. Then they choose the drugs and so on and so forth. And sometimes we automate it such that you key in the illness, the drug list comes out, corresponding drug list come out, and you just choose. So then, as with all IT system, there's an outage. Boom, system come down. Some of the MOs, some of the doctors, young doctors, have not seen a prescription form. They have not seen a prescription form. I'm not kidding. You can laugh. And then you know what they do? They line up the prescription form, then they take picture. Wow, like historical record, like some archive. Seriously, and they don't know how to fill in, and they say, "Hey, missy, nurse sister, how to fill in?" So with generative AI, with AI, and so on and so forth, what I am personally concerned, right, is that people will become overly reliant on all these. So instead of using AI to augment your intelligence, right, it may replace your intelligence, and we become a society, gradually become a society that we think less and we enjoy more. And then, again, Hollywood movie, one day AI will just rule your life.
Okay.
I think just a short one from me. I think in terms of the adversary, I look at AI or generative AI as a very data-hungry applications. Never have I seen, application that wants data from everywhere. unrelated data that's coming in. So I did a consultancy for a particular company, and where they're doing AI. And the thing is that the CDO at that point of time says, we need this data into this large language model, we need the other data, and then it's all totally unrelated. And then I went in and I says, what controls do you have to make sure that this data doesn't interconnect to each other or doesn't, provide any attacks that's coming in to retrieve those data. So it makes it very, very complicated, and to control, what outflows out of it becomes really a massive project by itself. The security part by itself. So that is, in fact, one of the biggest adversary, if implementing AI technology.
Okay. Any more to share from the panelists?
Probably put a light-hearted one, given it's 4:49. I mean, from what Benedict was saying, I think one of the adverse effects is, I worry one generation later, the joke about doctors' handwriting will no longer resonate because everything is digital. No one can ever appreciate the art of calligraphy that the doctors actually do. So that actually is a loss there. But on a serious note, one of the stuff is is data leakage, right? Because there's a lot of dependencies, on just take generative AI alone, right? To actually use that in a good way to try and solve things, right? Everything from, let's face it, you write sometimes your resumes on it, you write your thesis on it, right? Or sometimes they talk about how you can optimize your programming, your codes, your SQLs and things like that. It popped up in the news 1 year ago, right? So if you copy and paste in there, you are actually leaving a data dump over on that side. So I think the data leakage is actually one of could be the adverse things to actually look out for. Not intentional, but it's just, it changes a different behavior. Because then that trust in that is very, very different, right? So it's kind of like now, deepfake is enabled because a lot of your personal videos and photos are actually online. If you reverse back a generation before, if it's on your photo albums, you probably won't have that issue. You will know when someone is photographing you. So I think it's about those kind of things that actually will actually emerge, new kind of risks.
Okay, I think we come to the last segment, which is probably what some of you are waiting for, the Q&A section. I'm not sure whether the software is already up. Oh, I got four questions here. Okay. Let me just pick one.
We all agreed that Benny will take all the questions because he's
so.
a double alumni.
Look, he's clearly the smartest guy of the lot, right? With the alumni.
I need a doctor.
No, use the
I need
LLMs.
someone to ensure me.
You go ChatGPT and find the answer.
Okay, I guess it depends on the nature of the question, right? Is it technical or is it more business kind of questions? Okay, I think this is an interesting hypothetical question. What happens if AI surpasses human intelligence and decision-making capabilities? How can we maintain control and ensure AI remains beneficial to humanities? I guess this is something, I don't think it's going to happen in the near future, but well.
I think, to me, AI will be as good or as evil as a human wants it to be. And that's my simple answer to that.
Okay, interesting. How about anyone else?
I think some job positioning, it will happen. It's already happening right now. Well, of course, there are some areas like creativity, interpersonal skills between humans is something that machines can't do it, right? How do we maintain that? How we keep upgrading ourselves? As what Benny have said, is both good and evil depending on the usage, right? Yeah, so that's my opinion. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it goes back to having a very well communicated awareness on the risks, right? I think that will be important, so that then even if it has surpassed us in certain ways, right? But we talk about the things on risk and ethics. These are the ones that is still very, very hard to codify. So there's always value for human ways of actually overseeing it. But another way to look at it as well, and this is half joke as well. I mean, if it comes to that point, we got to think about what do you call climate, right? The AIs and all the things. It requires a lot of compute power. We got to think about how it affects our energy consumption and stuff like that. You know, whilst the outputs, you know, pound on pound, if you look at it, yeah, it's really intelligent, but the human brain, let's not forget, is actually the most efficient, right? Our brain functions on 30 kilowatts of power only. And what's 30 kilowatts? Your light bulb. So those are the kind of things to actually, you know of. Where while there'll be certain areas that AI is good, as long as we are aware about the risk and how we actually apply it, that's a way to actually manage it, because there's always value added. There's always a human touch that's always required.
So David touched on something that's very interesting, right? So no matter how powerful your computer will be, the human mind is always much more powerful because of the synapses, the ways. You know, those believers, you see, God created this special organ for you, and you know they can connect and interconnect things and so on and so forth. So the intelligence, and you know the adage goes, if you don't use it, you lose it, right? So I'm not answering the AI questions per se, but from a research perspective, we are battling dementia and Alzheimer. All right, and recent research has shown that at around my age, my vintage 50-ish, 60, it is good to pick up a third language, a new language, to fire up your neurons again, so that you can prevent dementia. And nowadays, once upon a time, dementia is 60-something, 70-something, then you get it. Now 40-something, you can get it, you know, and it's getting younger and younger, right? So if you correlate the two, if you use too much AI to do too much of your thinking, you use less of your synapses and your brain, then maybe you will get dementia at an earlier age. We don't know. Someone probably need to do a research. So hence, we need to continually exercise our brain. And some people say that, you know, gone are the days, you know, you will not have an Einstein or a Michael Porter and so on and so forth in a lifetime. Very difficult, because people are not reflecting that much. People are not using that brain that much anymore.
Okay, in my class, I'd like to end my class with a question for them to reflect upon before we end the class in my classroom. Okay, anyway. Okay, I have a question that not technical, but senior management can answer. This will be interesting. How do you draw the line between allowing experimentation within the organization and the governance in managing the risk? How do you draw the line, allowing experimentation versus controlling the risk?
Maybe I'll try. There's a technical method, there's a cultural method, and then there is an actual, you know, commercial governance method. From technical perspective, it's great. Nowadays, you have, you know, things like Dockers, containerizations, virtualizations, right? So that's great, right? You can actually do that. That makes it better. So you do it in a sandbox per se. An error will be limited in its effect. You do not, you know, risk your entire network. Then from a culture perspective, it's actually important to encourage that, you know, experimentation, but then don't forget about failures. I think from a culture perspective, what I work on my team is to go, I would like to understand more about the failures rather than success. Success, you sing to it till the cows come home, no issues. But the failures, sometimes, you know, it doesn't work for a certain reason. You put it on the shelf. It might come for another business use case. That's very, very much so for things around analytics, AI and ML, pardon me. Then from a proper corporate, it's actually having the right governance, right? You want to say, okay, at a certain point, you need a certain incubation period that you want. And you fix a certain time where it's a very, very measurable, tangible outcome that you want to go for. Break it up to smaller chunks so that you can progress safely. And then you also limit your losses should it doesn't work. So I think that's a very management theory approach to it, to actually you know, allow experimentation.
Okay. I guess I got maybe one last question I'd like to raise. This is also interesting in our environment right now, especially in the context of vendors, different vendors, OpenAI or Microsoft or from Google. They are now offering secure environment. So whether it's for ChatGPT or anything else. So the question raised is then, therefore, is there still a need to create in-house safe and secure environment? Can't we just use the one provided by the vendors? Yeah, so that's the question.
I'm conscious I'm hogging the mic, but I'll go, yes, you still need in-house because you don't want a vendor lock-in, right? That's one.
Okay.
So the terms like multi-clouds and all is important. The second, very quickly on that is, vendors can actually do a lot of that because of the cloud infrastructure today. But the reality of cloud is that it involves a lot of microservices. Then it has a lot of focus on configuration that you need. So that's where the in-house people, the in-house technical skills are actually required.
Okay, anyone wants to add on to any final words? We're going to end very soon. Any final words for the audience about the risk from AI? They want to share words of wisdom?
I think I just go first. I think, I mean, what you mentioned is very right in terms of the explainability of the AI. So in all things that, in fact, my company is doing, all the tools that we have provided in terms of, that is powered by AI, it comes with explainability. It comes with interpretability. To interpret the data, to be able to explain to the user why this is caught up as spam or what is caught up as a virus. We want to be able to let the user, also discern that this is how we interpret the data, and then this is how we make sure that it is powered by AI and it's not, human in the loop, but it's human over the loop, that we're also looking into reinforced learning, taking your feedback, and retraining and making the model better to, ensure a safer digital experience for the user.
Okay. So explainability is important. We encounter this word again, right? Again. So in my undergraduate class, I teach explainability via models. So different models have different level of explainability, and I explain why is that so. And then in my master's class, I teach them a model agnostic technique, so that even the most darkest model, right, you can find a way to extract the explanations out from the model. So interested? Come join my class. Okay. Okay. So with that, we come to a cheerful end to our today's session, and I have my closing remarks. And we thank the panelists first.
Yes, let's give all our panelists a huge round of applause, and Dr. Chu as well, Professor Chu.